Okay, doctors, does your practice feel like it has economic syndrome right now? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the KC CHIROpulse Podcast, brought to you by CATS Consultants and Chiro Health USA. I'm Dr. Michael Perusich, and my co-host today is Dr. Troy Fox, as usual. Troy, you and I were kind of talking off camera a little bit. We've talked about this for a couple of weeks now, and it's kind of this weird environment right now that a lot of people feel like the economy is tight, stiff, not working right, too hot, too heavy. And I get it. And you had made mention the other day of something similar. And I thought this would just be a great topic because I know our listeners out there are probably feeling some of the same stuff.
Yeah, that was when you yelled at me and called me Captain Doom and Gloom. He didn't, but I did. I talked a little bit about it the other day, and I was like, hey, man, I feel like the economy's tight. I feel like it's a little sluggish, and I'm gauging it off of my practice. But we also you and I talked off camera a minute ago that practices trend, and right now mine's trending up like crazy. But several weeks ago, it wasn't. And so you know what I blamed it on? The economy. Nobody has any money. Everybody's tight, blah, blah, blah. So I want you, because you have a financial background, I want you to talk to us and talk us through a little bit of this, because quite frankly, what I'm doing is I'm getting stuff off of YouTube. Some of you guys are too, guys and gals, and some of it's coming from friends and acquaintances. You know, you get together for dinner and we talk about the economy or whatever. So a lot of us are getting our information from either biased sources, or we're getting them from sources that don't know what the heck they're talking about, or we're just chit-chatting with friends. So why don't you talk us through a little bit of what you're seeing right now? Because I am so curious about this. This is going to be the best podcast of the year.
Yeah, economics has this weird feel to it. And it's usually not intuitive. Economics has a very counterintuitive process to it. For example, if something's going up, what's the opposite of going up? Well, it's going down, but there's always two things happening. And it just depends on kind of sometimes what are you looking at? If you're looking at the downward slope of something, you're going to feel like it's down. If you're looking at the upward slope, you're going to feel like it's up. But that's your basic economics feel class for the show. But we have to look at really what are the things in the economy that really drive the economy. And the number one thing that drives our economy is fuel, the cost of fuel. And we've just come through a period of time where fuel was really, really high. But over the last couple of years, and people don't realize this, but over the last couple of years, as of the time we've recorded this podcast, gasoline is actually down about $2, a little over $2 actually per gallon than it was just a couple of years ago. But it takes a while for us to notice that and feel that, because what happens when gas is high, we slow down on our driving. You don't, Troy, because you got to drive all over Kansas to see patients.
Yeah.
But most of us start to slow down on our driving a little bit. And so we're not going to the gas station as often. So we're not really paying attention to it. But why does gas drive the economy? Well, it's transportation. So to get food and supplies and, you know, basic goods and things, Amazon, most of that's shipped by truck in the United States. And so as fuel comes down, so will consumer goods, but there's a lag time behind it. And we kind of have been in that lag time just a little bit. Then there's this other weird phenomenon that happens. And I don't know that really anybody understands it. I think we could speculate behind it, but whenever there's a government shutdown, in modern times, every time there's been a government shutdown, coming out of the shutdown, the consumer feels like the economy is bad. Okay. And it doesn't mean that it is. There's just some weird sense that I think what I think happens is during a shutdown, everybody thinks everything's shut down. And we equate that with the economy. We did the same thing during the pandemic. We equated the shutdown of the country to it being a bad economy. Now, were some people feeling the economics? Sure, because some people lost their jobs, but you know, they had unemployment and things that really took care of it. So it was just a sense that we had.
So let me ask a couple quick questions here.
Yeah.
So I've always looked at like how much people are spending at Christmas time. So that's not always the case then, because there could be a sentiment of things are tight and people pull back a little bit, even though the economy doesn't suck. So what you're saying is, and I like it, I love it because it sounds so simple. Look at
Mhm.
gas prices. And if gas prices are reasonable,
Mhm.
then we probably have a pretty good economy. If gas prices aren't reasonable, like in the 1970s during the embargo, that threw the whole economy off. And now
Right.
it makes sense because like we're trucking everything all over the place. And it even takes fuel, even for trains, it takes fuel.
Right.
You know, they're running diesel in a lot of cases. They're not running coal. This isn't the 1800s, right? So you're telling me that that's a big deal, but I didn't know the government shutdown deal either. See, it's like economy 101. Like I'm listening to Jim. What's that guy that rolls his sleeves up on CNBC? I can't remember his name. He's yelling all the time. I'm like listening to these people for trends and their, holiday shopper 10 and Q1, Q4, and I'm listening to all this stuff going, all right, now I understand it. And I'm like, you broke it down and made it really simple. So anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead. But that's so cool to know that, and to know that after a shutdown or like a pandemic, people feel like the economy, maybe we feel unsettled or uncertain.
And I think that's a lot of it. I think we just don't understand it enough to know how to react to it. So you
Okay.
said a couple of things in there that I want to key in on. We need to take just a real quick break for a word from our sponsor. So we'll be right back, but we're talking about really basics of economics and how it affects our practices. So we'll be right back.
In today's economy, every dollar counts. Families are facing tough choices, having to reconsider what was once essential to them. But when it comes to healthcare, no one should have to compromise on their well-being because of financial constraints. That's where ChiroHealth USA steps in, the solution for your practice. We understand the financial pressures families are under, whether they're insured, on Medicare, or paying out of pocket for treatment. By offering discounts on care, you can ensure that your patients can still afford the treatment they need. At ChiroHealth USA, we're committed to making sure no family has to sacrifice their health due to financial hardship. We'll work with you to create a game plan that keeps your waiting room full and your practice thriving. And here's the best part. Offering affordable care not only benefits your patients, but also positively impacts your bottom line. So why wait? Join ChiroHealth USA today and join the ranks of the most successful practices. Because when you put your patients first, everyone wins.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Chiropractic Economics Show. I just had to use the radio voice
I
for a
love
second.
it. Yeah.
So you mentioned, Troy, about the pandemic and the government shutdowns
Mhm.
and gasoline prices. So always watch gasoline prices. It's going to tell you if the cost of goods is going to go up or it's going to come down. Now, it's not immediate. There's that lag time in there. But
Mhm.
here's the other thing. You mentioned consumer spending at the holidays and things. Here's the crazy thing. If we have a bad economy, then explain to me why consumer spending is at an all-time high. So if it's at an all-time high, that means consumer sentiment feels like it's positive enough that they can spend money. Now, that's an interesting thing because the actual consumer sentiment numbers, it's an actual statistical economic figure that the government tracks, it has not been good lately. And yet here we've got consumer spending at this all-time high. So again, I think part of it is this phenomenon of coming out of the government shutdown. Also, a lot of people don't understand the tariffs. And a lot of people were feeling like the tariffs were driving costs up. Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve Chair, just admitted in the last December meeting that, yeah, tariffs have not driven inflation up like they anticipated they would. And here's why. In if when tariffs are applied correctly, they bring money into the government. And if the government uses to pay down the deficit, okay, so what's the deficit? The deficit is the amount of money we're spending over the budget. Okay. And that
Mhm.
deficit is there's an interest rate charge to it. And that's what's costing the economy so much money. And that's what a lot of times drives inflation. the government right now is using the tariffs to pay down that deficit. We've actually had a 20% reduction. Last time I heard, we've had a 20% reduction in the deficit already from tariffs. That takes pressure off the American economy, and ultimately, and only time will tell, could strengthen the dollar just a little bit more. But let's go back in history a little bit with tariffs. Income tax hasn't really been around all that long in the history of the United States. I can't remember exactly when it started, 1905 maybe, but don't quote me on that.
You're close. You're within a couple of years. I think it was like 03 or 05, one of the
Somewhere
two.
in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somewhere in there.
Which is another amazing thing when we think about that. We all complain about income tax. I do for sure. And property tax. I hate
Sure.
all that stuff.
Sure.
But like it hadn't been around that long.
It hasn't. So how was the government funded prior to that?
Which
And
is
we had
fantastic.
enough, our country had enough tariff money coming in that it was able to fund itself, and the American people didn't have to pay taxes at that point.
Right.
And you've actually heard some little bitty rumblings of, if we can keep tariffs going the way we are, that maybe our US American taxes might even go down. I mean, some people have said it could go away. I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be great if they did. But the reason why tariffs don't really drive prices up all the time, I'm not saying sometimes they don't, but all the time, it's not just an automatic, is because the producer, who is taxed with the tariff rate, still wants to produce.
Mhm.
And so if they pass that along to the consumer too much by raising prices, guess what? Their sales drop. Okay. So this is where the curves split again. So you got one thing going up, tariffs rates going up, but if that money's passed along to the consumer, then consumer buying is going to go down, and that manufacturer, if you will then begin to lose money. So manufacturers right now don't want to lose money. They lost enough during the pandemic, so they're absorbing a lot of the tariffs. And so this is why we're getting all this money into the country and able to pay down the deficit a little bit, which again will take pressure off all of us. And a lot of people say, well, my gosh, the stock market's doing great. It's just going nuts. And it's up as high as it's ever been. So the economy must be doing well. Don't fool yourself. The stock market and the economy really don't have much to do with each other.
Okay.
A good stock market doesn't mean we have a good economy. A bad stock market doesn't mean we have a bad economy, and vice versa. They're very disassociated from each other. So I know there's a lot of investment pundits out there trying to tie the two together, and they're really not. Now,
Is it always been that way? But like, or is there a time when maybe the market and the economy were more saddled together with each other and they're a little disassociated now? Or, I mean, what are your thoughts on that long term? Because I've heard that exact same thing, but I was always curious, was there a time when it was coupled together? Like maybe back when there was a gold standard and we followed it or something, or is it too much manipulation now on both sides? Or what?
that's
What
a
do you
really great, that's a really great question, Troy. I don't know. Maybe before the Federal Reserve was established, maybe there was some overlap between the two. That's a great
Mhm.
question. I don't really know. We have seen stock market crashes negatively impact the economy.
Mhm.
But relationary, they really don't drive each other for the most
Okay.
part.
I'm
Okay.
kind
Maybe
of
we could
glad
argue if it
actually.
crashes, it does, but yeah.
Yeah.
And I could probably argue the other way. If people are feeling good about the economy, they might save more. So
Mhm.
that
Yep.
brings me around to my next topic is, and I apologize, everybody. I can't remember the exact percentage, but household incomes are actually up a fairly substantial percentage. Now, when I say substantial, I don't mean they're up like 75%, but they're up
Mhm.
like 5% or more or something like that. Again, don't
Mhm.
quote me on the numbers, but they're up. So if income's going up, what happens when income goes up? Well, a couple of things. The big thing is over time, we as consumers get a little more comfortable with the money we have in our pocket. And so we want to spend it. And spending money, putting money back out into the economy, drives the economy in a positive direction and helps keep inflation under control. So that's another positive in the marketplace. So let's bring this back. How does all this equate to our practices? Well, if consumer spending is up, that means that consumers are willing to spend money. Okay. We just need to figure out how to attract them to our practices to spend money. I'm going to come back to that in a second. So consumer spending's up. If consumer incomes are up, then they have the money to spend. They're not just spending it on credit, even though we hear a lot about credit being in high usage right now. I think there's some other reasons for that. I think a lot of that's still us coming out of the pandemic in some ways, or habit in how we buy goods online, which is always by credit card. Anyway, that's another story. So what we have to learn how to do is we have to learn how to tap into the consumer's mindset. In fact, we just did a video on this in our CATS library. So if you're a member of CATS, it's called the New Consumer Mindset. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant video. Brilliant speaker. Oh, wait, that was me. I'm just kidding. But anyway, we've got to understand the consumer mindset right now. And so what's the consumer mindset? Well, it's value driven. It's completely value driven. People are still buying expensive cars. People are still buying expensive homes. They're buying things that they find value in. So does chiropractic have value? Yeah, big time. We're the profession that keeps people healthy for the long term, and we do it without drugs and surgery. You're aware of that, right, Troy?
Yeah, and I look at it from a standpoint of we're at the right place at the right time. And I say this because like it or hate it, I'm going to say this and you can say, oh my gosh, you just bastardized chiropractic. But we're the cockroaches that wouldn't go away. They tried to kill us. They tried to kill us so many times. And our product that we deliver to patients is of such great value that they couldn't get rid of it. And so as value becomes, to me, that's like stand up and cheer. I remember running through the hallways cheering back in the 90s when we won the lawsuit or the appeal that the AMA had, thinking that we'd actually made it, and we didn't make it back then because they just went underground with it. But what I see is that we provide great value, and as medicine and as deductibles and copays go up and it gets more expensive and blah, 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 and people see value and care, where are they going to go? Well, they're going to go to chiropractic because they see a value in that. And it isn't always that the population doesn't see a value and care. I've had patients say, and we've all had them over time, well, my insurance covers blah, blah, blah. And they end up in a service that they really maybe know isn't going to be the best. It's not the A+ service that you are going to have for them, but their insurance paid for it. So they're going to go with that service right now. Those days are kind of going on. We're getting more expensive so far as deductibles. And so I agree with you. Value driven is really where it's at. And I'm
value driven
about that. And sorry for any of you that were triggered by me saying the cockroach thing, but it's like, man, we have endured a lot as chiropractors and shouldn't have, absolutely. But we have, and you know what? We've survived it.
Yep. Troy always has the best analogies. So you mentioned insurance. So there's a potential trap you could get into in 2026. So let's just bring it back to 2026 and what we think might happen. And the trap is, in the process of trying to explain to patients that we're value driven, we have to be careful about how we set our fees and those kind of things. So if we look like we're just going lower and lower and lower, we're actually going to pull our value, our ability to show value away. And that's one of those economic counterintuitive ideas. Because you would think the lower I go with cost, my pricing, the more patients should want to experience it. So you have to be careful there. You also have to be careful about lowering your price to the point where you can't make a profit.
It's hard to sail a ship from the bottom of the ocean.
There you go.
I just made that up.
Another Troyism.
Troyism.
A Troyism. So we have to be careful about that. We also have to be careful about the insurance message. And you may be sitting out there thinking, well, I'm a cash practice, I don't have to worry about insurance. Yeah, I think we all do. I think we have to be wary of what's happening with the insurance market. And people are going to be doling out big bucks this next year, potentially in insurance premiums for insurance that still makes them spend a lot of money when they use it. But patients don't understand enough about insurance to really realize that that insurance plan that has a $2,000 a month premium and a
Mhm.
$15,000 deductible, they don't realize that that means they're going to have to spend $39,000 before their insurance really kicks in. And oh, by
Yeah.
the way, they got a $90 copay along the way. And that's the reality of what people are going to be looking at. And so I think in their mind, in the patient's mind, even though people don't see value in health insurance, but they see value in wanting to use it, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, the differentiation. And I think in that process, I think people are going to be very prone to wanting to use their insurance. So we're going to have to really get good at a communication strategy that points out the fact that in chiropractic care, you don't need insurance for it to be valuable. And I'm not going to go into the details of that. Be a CATS member and we'll teach you how to do it. But that's not a lure. It's going to take us 4 hours to teach you how to do it here. We don't have time on the show, but um, we've got to get really good at that messaging, especially on the phone. Your first phone
Mhm.
call, and docs listening out there, you're not the one probably taking the first phone call. So your staff's going to have to be good at these
We
messages.
hope you're not anyway, but yeah, my staff and I are already working on 26 and talking about the insurance message because we
Yeah.
know there's going to be changes and we understand. And that was kind of the counterintuitive thing. When you talked about counterintuitive with the market, the first thing I thought of is, oh, copays and deductibles are going up. Then I sat down and thought about it for a little while and I thought, you know what? I remember back when copays went from $10 to $25. And everybody felt like they really needed to use their insurance because insurance premiums went up at the same time. So they
Yep.
went up in premium, up in copay, and everybody's like, oh, I got to use my insurance. And you're like, and they're like, nope, I'm going to go use my insurance. So you really have to know that counterintuitively, like you said, there's going to be a
Mhm.
great desire to utilize that insurance because they're paying a boatload of money for that. And in a
Yep.
lot of cases, they're not getting 100% coverage from their employer. Those days are gone. So a lot of people are paying out of every paycheck for that insurance.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
We got to take another quick break, but I'm going to give you guys a little jewel when we come back about copays and the chiropractic patient and service. So, quick break. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're talking about everybody's favorite subject, the economy and economics. Actually, it's one of mine because I loved economics in college. And a lot of you probably don't know, I was actually in investment banking for 10 years before I went back to chiropractic school. And so I learned a lot about how all this stuff works doing that in mergers and acquisitions. So anyway, beside the point, when you have a patient in front of you that has a $90 deductible, okay, here's what I want you to think. Or yeah, sorry, copay.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you.
I want a
$90 deductible.
$90
That'd be great, right?
Yeah.
When you have a patient with a $90 deductible, think about this. The average collection visit average, at least in the Midwest and the Southeast right now and Southwest, is between $55 and $65. Okay.
Mhm.
Is that 90? No. Is it far away from 90? Barely. At 55, you're $45 away from, or $35 away from 90. So this is what you tell the patient. Why would you want to pay your copay in my practice when my service is only 55? Why would you want to pay that $90 copay when my service is only 55? There is a tremendous opportunity to move patients over to cash in those scenarios.
Mhm.
And they have the right under HIPAA to sign a letter for you or give you a letter that states they don't want to use their insurance, and you can put them on a cash plan. Just make sure you
Mhm.
have a qualified cash plan like a Chiro Health USA. But So I think there's tremendous opportunity here. And I think the practices that learn how to drive the value communication and learn how to speak around insurance and learn how to attract the right patients, um, and learn how to communicate to patients of the long-term value of chiropractic care, so they get them in, you get patients to become lifetime patients. Those are the practices they're going to win in 2026. And I'm telling you, I think they're going to win big. There's always been opportunities for chiropractic if you're really paying attention.
Mhm.
But I really firmly believe that 2026 could be one of the best years chiropractic could ever see if we're just on our chops right.
And coherent messaging. The problem is
Yeah, true.
if you want to live in a wellness world, but yet you don't preach a wellness message in your practice, you're gonna falter. And that's why when we talk about wellness and we talk about long-term care with patients and a cadence of care that a patient should be on, whatever terminology you want to use, when we're talking about that, we're talking about keeping a patient well. You know, we were talking about our mission statement in our office, and it's a really simple one. Get patients better and keep them well.
Yep.
Simple,
Pretty
right?
simple.
But if you're going to keep them well, they got to be in my office to stay well. They're not
Right.
going to be, it's like going to a dentist and going, hey, I went and got my cavity pulled at the dentist or my tooth pulled and a couple of cavities fixed. Now I'm going to wait for 10 years before I go back until I have another cavity. Your dentist is going, oh, please no, we don't want all that work. You don't want all that expense. And so in the long run, when you're talking about a wellness message, it's a great time to bring the conversation is that in the long run, you're actually going to save money with a cadence of care that's going to keep you well,
Yep.
rather than getting all crazy, having to go through big old treatment schedules to get well. It's a lot easier to go through that. Now, you also have to have that insurance conversation at the time. So what you want to do is sit down with your staff, and here's a big caveat for you. This is a big one. I'm going to give it away for free. You have to get together with your staff and you guys have to sit down. And we're not big fans of scripts at CATS, right? We're not scripting people. We like verbiage and we like to have similar verbiage. So what I recommend you guys do is sit down and you write a semi-script or maybe a screenplay of how you would
We
approach
have those
the
too.
patient. Yeah. And then when you do that, then you guys work through it in your own language and start
Yep.
seeing what it sounds like. And we, with our clients, we help folks with that. But if you're just doing this on your own, that's the easiest way you can do it is get together with your staff and come up with a coherent message that actually makes sense to the patient. Does your staff go, oh, that makes sense. If I were going to use my insurance, that would be a reason I wouldn't want to use it. So
Yep.
that's a really easy one to do.
Yep. Love it. So we're going to wrap up here. I just want to throw out a little disclaimer. These thoughts that we put out today, they're just our opinions about things, and I told you, don't quote me on numbers and things like that. I'm close on some of this stuff, but the message here is that Chicken Little is not falling from the sky, in our opinion. There's tremendous opportunity out there for chiropractors. The economy looks like it's starting off on a really good foot in 2026. Maybe not everybody's feeling it yet, but understand that you're in a profession that is the leader in value in healthcare. So get on every mountaintop and scream that from the top of your lungs and teach people. This is your patient education. Teach people the value of what we do. And I think you're going to have tremendous success. So if you haven't done so yet, go to catsconsultants.com, check out what we're doing for clients. We're unique. We're the leader in helping doctors with the business side of practice, which is most of what makes you profitable, other than helping you get great outcomes, which we don't come to your office and see your patients. That's the only thing we don't do, I think. But seriously, go check us out. We appreciate you tuning in every week to the KC CHIROpulse Podcast. We have a blast doing this, and we love the feedback that we get. So be sure to share and subscribe to the show. Troy, anything to add?
Man, I appreciate you doing this today because I think we all learned a lot because quite frankly, you have that business background and that finance background that you can't purchase that. You lived it for 10 years. And I think it's fantastic to be able to hear from somebody. And like we said, don't go out and sell your kids today because you think the sky is falling. And don't go out and make stock decisions based on what we told you today. We're just talking about trending. And Dr. Perusich put out what traditionally has been a very good indicator for the economy. So I was excited to hear that because I've read otherwise, seen Jim Cramer. That was the guy's name on
Jim
CNBC.
Cramer. Yeah.
So shout out to Jim Cramer.
Hi, Jim.
Jim's always got ideas, right? But he never talked about the cost of fuel because it's the problem with that is how long would his show last on CNBC if we just used one indicator? Hey, gas is up today. Gas is down today.
Right.
Yeah. So they got to talk about, oh, this stock is great because of this and that. And so I like your trending stuff. So we appreciate you doing this for us today.
It was my pleasure. It's one of my favorite topics. So appreciate all of you out there. From all of us here at Katz Consultants, we want to thank Chiro Health USA as well. Troy, thanks for being on here as always. And you know what? We'll see you next week.
See ya.